When they say a small town protects its own, it's a lie. At least it's the biggest lie ever told in Ashwood, Oregon. Here we don't protect our own. We protect the chosen ones. And if you're not part of the team, you're just collateral damage. My name is Sarah Miller, and for 18 years, I was the collateral damage that guaranteed the home team's victory. In Ashwood, autumn doesn't smell like cinnamon coffee or dry leaves. It has a specific smell: fresh-cut grass, the cold metal of dew-covered bleachers, and the sour odor of cheap beer coming from the adults watching practice. The only religion here is high school football, and the blinding Friday night lights are our cathedral. The high priest of this religion? My father, Robert Miller. But no one called him that. He was, and always will be, Coach Miller, a man built like an oak wardrobe, whose voice was a thunderclap, capable of stopping 300 boys in the middle of a play. He didn't walk, he marched, whistle hanging from his neck like a crucifix. Gray eyes scanning everything for weakness. And the Messiah? The God incarnate he worshipped. That was my brother, Kevin Miller. Kevin was the quarterback, the golden boy. 17 years old, 6 feet of defined muscle, perfect blonde hair, and that toothpaste commercial smile that made mothers sigh and girls write Mrs. Miller in their notebooks. To Ashwood, Kevin wasn't just a boy. He was the promise. The promise of a Division I scholarship. The promise of putting our forgotten town on the map. The promise of victory. My father saw the sun in Kevin. For me, all that was left was the shadow. I was the quiet daughter, the good girl, the cheerleader who was in the back row because I wasn't light enough to be a flyer, but smart enough to help the other girls with their homework. My father rarely saw me. When he did, it was to send me to get a beer for him and Kevin while they watched reruns of Sunday games. Be useful, Sarah. Get another one for your brother. The whole town loved Kevin. Fathers pointed to him in diners. Be like Kevin. Teachers gave him grades he didn't earn. The local sheriff tore up his speeding tickets. The boy's just having fun, coach. No one saw what I saw. No one saw how his blue eyes would get dull and heavy after the post-game parties. No one smelled the whiskey on his breath, even though he was underage. No one saw the hole he punched in my bedroom wall, which my mother covered with a poster. Just a teenage accident. No one saw the way he looked at me when we were alone. That look that wasn't brotherly. It was a look of possession, of power. "You're my #1 fan, aren't you, Sarah?" he would whisper, cornering me in the dark hallway, the smell of grass and sweat dominating the air. The only one who seemed to notice I existed as a person was Ryan Foster. He wasn't football. He was library. Quiet, thin, wore glasses patched up with tape, and drew amazing superheroes in the margins of his notebooks. He smelled like old paper and chalk dust. Ryan was my only friend, the only person in Ashwood who didn't think the world began and ended on the 50-yard line. Ryan was my calm, and for that very reason, he would be the first to be sacrificed. Hell began in my senior year of high school. The golden season. Kevin was about to break the state record for touchdown passes. My father was going to be named Coach of the Decade. Everything was perfectly aligned until I started getting sick in the mornings. The smell of my father's strong coffee made me run to the bathroom. The cheerleader uniform, that ridiculous pleated skirt, suddenly stopped closing at the waist. I tried to convince myself it was stress, a stomach bug. But in October, under those same Friday night cathedral lights, as Kevin scored another touchdown and the crowd screamed his name, I felt it. A movement, a tiny flutter, like a frightened butterfly, right below my navel. I was 16 years old, and inside me, growing silently, was the secret that could burn the Miller dynasty to the ground. Today, 20 years later, I'm in Denver. My son Leo is in the next room, filling out an online form on his laptop. He has my brown eyes, but the square jaw and the easy smile. He got that from someone else. He's excited. He wants to take one of those DNA tests. "To know my roots," he said, laughing. Roots. He has no idea that the roots he's looking for are buried in poisoned soil, back in Ashwood. He has no idea that the hero dad I invented for him, the quiet boy from the library who died in a car accident, was in fact the only friend I ever had, and that his biological father is the monster my entire town still calls a legend. November arrived in Oregon like a cold, wet blanket. For me, it was a blessing. Ashwood's winter was my only accomplice. As the town covered itself in flannel and heavy coats, I could hide my secret under layers of wool. The baggy gray football team sweatshirt, which I used to hate, became my daily armor. The stadium stopped smelling like cut grass. Now it smelled like mud and frozen sweat. I kept going to the games. I had to go. Being coach's daughter and the quarterback's sister wasn't a privilege, it was a function. I smiled with my pom-poms, my stomach churning, guilt and panic rising in my throat. I lived in a constant state of calculated terror. I counted the days, 8 weeks, 9, 10. I became a mathematician of despair, calculating the impossible. I would vomit silently in the school bathroom, turning the faucet on full blast to muffle the sound. I ate in my room, claiming too much homework, because the smell of the Sunday roast my father loved so much made me gag violently. My mother, Mary, floated through the house like a ghost. She was a small woman, faded by the shadow of the 2 men she served. Her specialty was denial. She could see a fire in the living room and offer to get a glass of water. She cleaned the hole Kevin made in the wall. She washed his alcohol-scented clothes, and she never, ever asked questions. But my silence was different. It was a silence that was changing the shape of my body, and that she couldn't ignore. I needed help. I needed an anchor before the tide took me. And there was only one person in Ashwood who didn't see me as Kevin's sister. I found Ryan in the library, as always. It was the only place in town that smelled like peace. He was drawing, old headphones on, completely absorbed. I sat down in front of him. My hands were shaking so hard they tapped against the oak table. He looked up, and instantly the music and the drawings vanished. He saw my face. "Sarah, what's wrong? Did he do something again?" His voice was so gentle it broke the dam. The tears I had held back for weeks overflowed, hot and shameful. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head no, and then with absolute terror I nodded yes. "Ryan," I whispered, and the sound of my own desperation scared me. I think I didn't have to finish. Ryan wasn't an athlete. He was smart. He observed. He had noticed my baggy sweatshirts, my sunken eyes, my pallor. He didn't ask, "Whose is it?" He didn't ask, "How?" The first question Ryan Foster asked me was, "What do you want to do?" No one had ever asked me that. My father decided what we had for dinner. Kevin decided what movie we watched. In Ashwood, my wants didn't exist. The simple act of him asking me that, "What do you want?" was the first act of human kindness I had received in months. I collapsed, sobbing right there, between the shelves of American history. He didn't touch me. He just waited. He passed me a tissue. There's a clinic in Portland," he stammered, clearly terrified. I can look it up. I have some savings. I can take you. Coach doesn't have to know." He was willing to risk everything for me. The quiet boy from the library was willing to face the god of Ashwood to help me. If this story has touched you so far, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. That moment of hope lasted exactly 48 hours. The discovery wasn't dramatic. There was no fainting at the prom, no pregnancy test found in the trash. It was far more domestic, and therefore far more brutal. It was a Tuesday. I had managed to avoid dinner. Beef stew, the metallic smell of the cooked blood made me green. I was in my room trying to breathe deeply when the door opened without warning. It was my mother. She wasn't carrying a food tray or a headache remedy. She stood in the doorway, her hands clasped in her faded floral apron, and looked at me. Not at my face, at my stomach. The sweatshirt wasn't enough anymore. There was an undeniable curve there, a life that refused to be ignored. "Mom," I started. "Take off the sweatshirt, Sarah." Her voice was low, emotionless. A command, not a request. The blood froze in my veins. I'm cold. Take it off, now! Slowly, as if undressing in front of a firing squad, I lifted the sweatshirt. Underneath, I was just wearing an old t-shirt. The truth was there, stretching the thin fabric over my abdomen. The silence in the room was deafening. The only sound was the clock ticking on my nightstand, marking the end of my life. My mother closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, there were no tears. There was no empathy. There was only a deep, frigid, and terrifying disappointment. "You are going to ruin us," she whispered. "Kevin's year, your father's record. You're going to throw it all in the trash because of carelessness." "It wasn't carelessness," I said, my voice failing. "I don't care what it was. How could you be so selfish?" "Mom," I begged, the tears returning. "Mom, you have to help me. It was him. It was Kevin." The confession hung in the air between us. The absolute truth, spoken aloud for the first time. Her reaction was not to hug her abused daughter. Her reaction was to protect her abuser's son. She took a step forward and slapped me. The crack echoed in the silent room. It wasn't a hard slap. It was a quick, sharp slap, like a viper's, a slap to silence. "You will never," she hissed, her face pale with fury. "Never repeat that lie again. Do you hear me? You're going to stain your brother's name with this filth. But it's the truth. The truth is whatever your father decides it is. Now go wash your face. We are going to have a family meeting. Your father will solve this problem of yours." She didn't hand me over to my protector. She threw me to the wolves. 10 minutes later, I was in my father's office. It wasn't an office. It was a shrine. The walls were covered with trophies, championship pennants, and framed photos of Kevin. Kevin crossing the goal line, Kevin lifting a trophy, Kevin on my father's shoulders. I wasn't in any of the pictures. My father sat behind his mahogany desk. My mother stood, cowering near the unlit fireplace. And Kevin was there, leaning against the doorframe, casually cleaning the mud from his cleats with a pocket knife. He looked bored. "So," my father began, his coach's voice making the trophies vibrate. He didn't look at me. He looked at my mother. "Mary says you have a problem." I couldn't breathe. The smell of old leather and trophy varnish was suffocating me. "Sarah," he said, finally turning those cold gray eyes on me. "Look at me. Who was it?" I looked at my mother. She looked away. I looked at Kevin. He gave an arrogant little smile, as if he were watching a boring TV show. "Who?" my father repeated, slamming his hand on the desk, making me jump. "Was the bastard who did this to you?" I flinched. The silence stretched. "Answer me, Sarah." My voice was almost inaudible, a wisp of sound. It was Kevin. Nothing. My father didn't move. He didn't yell. He didn't look surprised. He slowly turned his leather chair to face his son. "Kevin?" Kevin finally stopped messing with his cleat. He looked at our father, and the arrogant smile widened. "Me?" He laughed, a short, dry sound. "Dad, come on. She's my sister. That's disgusting." He pointed the pocket knife casually in my direction. "She's the one who throws herself at everyone. She's easy. Frankly, if you want to know, I'm pretty sure it's that weirdo's. The library rat, Ryan." The instant the name Ryan left Kevin's mouth, it was as if a spell was broken. My father relaxed. The knot of muscle in his neck loosened, and the color returned to his face. He didn't need proof. He didn't need confirmation. Kevin's version was better. It was cleaner. It was the story Ashwood could accept. The Golden Boy quarterback would never fall, but the library weirdo, he was born to be the villain. "Ryan Foster," my father repeated, the name leaving his mouth like a piece of spoiled food. He stood up, and for the first time that night, he looked directly at me. His look wasn't anger. It was command. "Go to your room, Sarah, and stay there." "But Dad, it wasn't—" "I said," he thundered, and the whole room shook. "Go to your room. This matter is closed." Kevin smiled at me over our father's shoulder as I passed him in the hall. It was a smile of total victory. He had cornered me, used me, broken me, and now he had silenced me using my only friendship as a weapon. I went up the stairs, my legs feeling like lead. I heard the front door slam hard and the sound of my father's truck engine roaring to life in the cold night. I don't know what's worse, the sound of a monster roaring or the silence of a monster planning. That night, in the Miller house, I experienced both. I didn't sleep. I sat on my bed, in the dark, listening. The headlights of cars passing on the street cast dancing shadows on the poster my mother had used to cover the hole in the wall. Around midnight, I heard the truck return. I heard my father and Kevin come inside. There were no shouts. There was the sound of whiskey glasses clinking on the coffee table and low laughter. They were celebrating. The next day, school felt like a minefield. Ryan wasn't there. His seat in the library was empty. His seat in English class, empty. At lunch, the buzz started. At first it was low, a whisper in the halls. By the end of the day, it was a wildfire. Did you hear about Ryan Foster? My mom said Coach Miller went to his grandma's house last night. I heard he got expelled. The official version, carefully leaked by the football team's propaganda machine, was disgusting and effective. Ryan Foster, the weirdo, the library rat, was obsessed with Sarah Miller. He had supposedly forced her, they never used the word rape, for someone in the Miller family, only for outsiders. When discovered by Coach, the coward fled town in the middle of the night to avoid facing the consequences. They didn't just destroy his reputation, they turned him into a fugitive predator. I tried calling his house. The phone rang and rang and rang until it went to his grandmother's answering machine, an old recording with a trembling voice. I had to see him. I had to fix this. That night, I climbed out my bedroom window. I ran the 8 blocks to Ryan's house. It was a small peeling paint house on the wrong side of the tracks. The porch light was on, but the house looked dead. I knocked on the door, once, twice, 3 times. Finally, it opened a crack. It was Ryan's grandmother, Mrs. Foster, a tiny woman wrinkled by time, who always smelled of lavender and mothballs. That night, she smelled like fear. "Mrs. Foster, where's Ryan? I need to talk to him. It's not true. None of it is—" "Go away, girl," she whispered, her voice broken. She had been crying. Her red, swollen eyes could barely focus on me. "Please, go away," she repeated louder. "You've already caused enough trouble. Your father, he came here. He said that if Ryan wasn't gone by dawn, he would make my son," Ryan's father, who worked at the lumber mill that supplied wood for the stadium my father was renovating, lose his job. He said he'd call social services, say I was too old to care for a grandson, that the house wasn't safe. They were going to take him, Sarah. They were going to throw him in a foster home. I staggered backward, as if I'd been punched. My father hadn't used physical violence. He used something much worse. He used the absolute power the town had given him. He threatened to destroy the only family Ryan had. "Where is he?" I cried. "Gone," she said, the tears streaming freely now. "Took the first bus to Portland. With $20 in his pocket and a backpack. He's gone. And you, Miller girl, you never come back to this house. You're poison, just like the rest of your family." She shut the door in my face. I stood there on the dark porch, in the cutting Oregon cold, and I understood what it was to be truly complicit. My silence, my fear, had cost Ryan his life. I walked home, numb. The house was dark, except for the kitchen light. My father was sitting at the table, a calendar open in front of him. My mother was by the stove, warming a glass of milk. "Where were you?" my father asked without looking up. I went for a walk." "Liar. You went to see him," he said matter-of-factly. "It's no use. The Foster problem is solved." He circled a date on the calendar with a red pen. It was a Friday, 2 weeks away. "What's that?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "That's the day your problem will be solved," he said. My mother turned, placing the warm glass of milk in front of me. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Your father found an excellent place for you, Sarah," she said, her voice falsely cheerful, as if announcing a vacation. "A home for young women in Boise, Idaho. Very discreet. They'll take care of you until the baby is born." I looked at the milk. "And after?" My father finally faced me. His gray eyes were like ice. Afterward, the baby will be given up for adoption, a closed adoption. A good, sterile couple from there is already waiting. You'll stay there for a few weeks to recover and then you'll come home. No one in Ashwood needs to know anything. You can say you went to visit a sick aunt. No, I said. It was a whisper. It's not a question, Sarah. It's the plan. It's my baby, I said. The first spark of anger I'd felt in months. You can't just give it away. I can, my father said calmly. I can and I will. You are 16. You are my minor daughter. I am your father. And I will not let a bastard mistake ruin your brother's scholarship and the future of this family. He stood up, towering over me. Kevin is about to get everything we've worked for. You will not ruin this. You will go to Boise. You will have this thing, and you will forget this ever happened. Do you understand me? I looked at my mother. One last, desperate plea. She turned her back to me and started washing dishes that were already clean. That's when I knew I had no father. I had no mother, and my brother was my jailer. I was completely alone, and they were going to steal the only thing in the world that was mine. The next 2 weeks were the longest and quietest of my life. I became the perfect daughter, the model prisoner. I stopped crying. I stopped arguing. I said, "Yes, Dad," and "Thank you, Mom." I went to school, sat quietly in the library. Ryan's spot now looked like a tomb, and came straight home. I ate everything my mother put in front of me, even if my stomach protested. I needed strength, me and the baby. We would need all the strength in the world. While my family relaxed, believing I had accepted my fate, I was planning a war. My father and brother were obsessed with the final state championship game, which was on the same Friday I was scheduled to disappear. The entire house vibrated with this energy. Tactical plans spread across the living room table, late-night phone calls, Kevin being massaged by my mother. Sarah's injury was a logistical problem they had already solved. Now they could focus on what really mattered. Their arrogance was my shield. No one was watching me. I was a ghost in my own home, and ghosts have nothing to lose. The plan was born from panic. Where to go? Portland. Ryan was there. My father would find him. I had to go further, east. I looked at an old map of the United States in the back of my geography book. Colorado, Denver. It looked big. It looked far away. It looked like a place a person could disappear into the altitude. But Denver required money, and I had none. I stole. I'm not proud of it, but I'd do it again. I started small. $5 from my mother's wallet, 10 from my father's pizza money drawer. The main theft, however, was the riskiest. Kevin, like the god he was, didn't use a wallet. He just threw wads of cash into his sock drawer. Money he won from illegal bets on his own games. Money that adult fans gave him in bars. It was dirty money, and I took it. $240, $100 bill, the rest in 20s. It was enough to buy a one-way bus ticket anywhere. I hid the money and a change of clothes, the only ones I had that weren't maternity clothes but would have to do, inside an old backpack in the bottom of my closet, under a blanket that smelled like mildew. The night before my departure, the night before D-Day, was the night of the pre-game banquet, an Ashwood tradition. The entire team was at my house. The smell of chili and cornbread filled the air. The house was loud, full of laughter and my father's arrogant speeches. No one noticed when I slipped into his office. I needed one last thing. I couldn't just disappear. I needed to leave a mark, a scar. Ryan couldn't be the only victim. My father kept a locked metal box in his desk drawer, the Dynasty box. Inside, he kept what he valued most, the newspaper clippings of every one of Kevin's victories, his recruitment game tapes, and the signed letter of intent from the University of Oregon, his full ride scholarship. That was Kevin's future, the Holy Grail. I took the box. I took it to the bathroom, locked the door, and turned on the bathtub faucet, full blast. With trembling hands, I poured the entire bottle of my mother's nail polish remover, pure acetone, over those VHS tapes and the letter of intent. The chemical smell burned my nose. I didn't light a match. That would be too loud, too obvious. The acetone would do the job on its own. It would melt the ink, fuse the tapes. It would be a silent, irreversible destruction. I put the box back, locked the drawer, and left the office. That night, I didn't sleep. I waited. 3 a.m. The house was dead. The smell of stale beer and dried chili hung in the air. Friday had arrived. Game day. The day of my escape. The day of my exile. I put on 3 layers of clothes. I grabbed my backpack. The money was in my shoe. I went down the stairs, 1 step at a time. Every creak of the old wood was a pistol shot in the silence. I reached the back door. I turned the knob slowly, praying. Unlocked. I was in the backyard. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe. Frost covered the grass where Kevin used to practice. I was free. I ran. I didn't run to the bus station. It was too obvious. My father would cancel my ticket, call the sheriff. I had a meeting point. I ran the 8 blocks back to the wrong side of the tracks. I ran back to the small, peeling paint house. I didn't knock. The porch light was off this time, but the front door was slightly ajar, a silent invitation in the dark. I stepped inside. Mrs. Foster was sitting in her armchair, dressed in a heavy coat, even though the house was warm. A small travel bag was at her feet. "I knew you'd come," she said, her voice calm. "Mrs. Foster, I'm so sorry about Ryan. I'm so—" "Hush, child. We don't have time for tears. We have time for action." She had seen my escape before I had even planned it. She was the only person in Ashwood who knew how cornered I was. The only one who knew I hadn't sacrificed Ryan. We had both been sacrificed. "You can't take the bus here," she said, getting up with difficulty. "Your father owns this town. The bus driver would call him before you even reached the next county." "But I have no other way." "I am your other way," she said. She handed me a crumpled envelope. Inside, there was another $80. "It's what I could scrape together." "It's for your ticket." "I can't accept this, Mrs. Foster. After what my family did." "It's not from your family. It's from me to you. And for Ryan," she said, her dark eyes shining with a strength I had never seen. "He called me from Portland. He's safe for now. He told me to help you. He said you were the only good thing in this town." The air left my lungs. He didn't hate me. "We're going to Eugene," she continued, grabbing her bag. "It's the next big city, 2 hours from here. My nephew lives there. He's picking me up from the train station in the morning. But tonight, I'm taking you to the bus station in Eugene. From there, you can buy a ticket to anywhere. They won't look for you there." She, the woman I had hurt the most, was risking everything. She was going to lie to her family, travel in the middle of the night, all to save me. "Why?" I whispered. "Because Mrs. Foster said, opening the back door to her old car, a rusty Chevrolet. "I know what it's like when men like your father decide who lives and who dies, and I'm not letting that monster win again. Now get in the car. We have to be gone before the sun comes up." I got into the car that smelled like lavender and mothballs. As we pulled away silently, I looked back at the silhouette of Ashwood against the lightening sky. The football cathedral looked small and pathetic from a distance. I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling that tiny flutter of life. We weren't being banished. We were escaping. The Eugene bus station at 5 a.m. felt like another planet. It was impersonal, smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee, and no one, absolutely no one, cared who I was. It was the safest place I had ever been. Mrs. Foster didn't stay for long goodbyes. She walked me to the ticket counter, making sure I kept my back to the entrance. "One-way ticket to Denver, Colorado," I told the sleepy attendant, my voice sounding strangely adult. He barely looked at me. As he printed the ticket, Mrs. Foster squeezed my hand. Her skin was like paper, but her grip was strong. "Be smart, child. Change your name. Change your hair. Never look back. And when this baby is born," she paused, her eyes filling with water for the first time, "tell him he came from love. The rest doesn't matter. Tell him he was loved from the very first second." "I will," I promised, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Thank you. For everything. Tell Ryan He knows," she interrupted. "Now go! And Godspeed." I didn't look back. I got on the bus, found a window seat, and didn't move for 12 hours. I watched green Oregon turn into the arid mountains of Idaho, then the vast plains of Wyoming, until finally The Rocky Mountains rose on the horizon like a promise of a fortress. Denver, Colorado. I was 16 years old, 5 months pregnant, had $150 in my shoe, and didn't know a single soul. I was terrified, and for the first time in my life, I was completely free. The first few months were the hardest hell I've ever lived. Living in a women's shelter with other broken girls, all running from their own demons. The smell of boiled cabbage and hopelessness. But it was an honest hell. I worked washing dishes at a diner that paid cash under the table. I slept in a bunk bed, hugging my belly, feeling the kicks get stronger and stronger. I kept my promise. I became Sarah Foster. Foster, in honor of the boy who sacrificed everything for me. I cut my hair short, let it grow back to its natural brown, without the blonde streaks Kevin liked. The old Sarah Miller died on that bus. In March, in a public hospital in Denver, with a kind nurse holding my hand, I gave birth. It was fast, brutal, and deafening. And then silence, broken by the most powerful cry I had ever heard. A boy. When they placed him on my chest, all red, wrinkled, and furious at the world, something inside me clicked into place. He was real. He was mine. And looking at him, I knew Mrs. Foster was right. He had nothing to do with the violence of his conception. He was just him. He looks just like his father, the nurse said, smiling. My heart stopped, but I smiled back. Yes, he does. I named him Leo, because he was a lion, a fighter. Leo Foster. The lie I told him was the story I wished had been true. When he was old enough to ask, I told him about his father, Ryan Foster. I told him Ryan was the kindest, bravest man I had ever known, that he loved to draw superheroes, and that he smelled like old books, that he was my best friend, that he was so happy when he found out we were going to have a baby. And then I told him that just before he was born, Ryan died in a terrible car accident, an icy road one night. I gave my son a hero instead of a monster. I gave him an origin of love, not hate. And I gave Ryan, wherever he was, the honor that my father and brother tried to steal from him. I never heard from Ashwood again. I don't know what happened when my father discovered the box of melted tapes. I don't know if Kevin ever got his scholarship, or if my mother ever stopped washing clean dishes. They are ghosts, dead to me. Life in Denver was hard, but it was ours. I worked 2, sometimes 3, diner jobs. I rented a tiny but sunny apartment. I watched Leo take his first steps, say his first words. I saw him draw his first superheroes, just like Ryan. I watched him grow into a kind, intelligent, good man. Everything Kevin never was. Which brings me back to today. 20 years have passed. I'm in the kitchen of our apartment, which is a bit bigger now. The smell is coffee, not chili. Leo walks into the kitchen, laptop in hand, his smile making my heart ache. Done, Mom. I filled everything out. I just have to click buy. The DNA kit will be here in 3 days. I look at the screen, a cheerful ad of a smiling family discovering their heritage. Leo, sweetie, I start, my mouth dry. Why is this so important to you right now? He looks at me, genuine confusion in his eyes. I don't know, Mom. I want to know where I came from. I want to know more about Dad's side. Maybe I have cousins. Maybe I'll find out where my drawing talent comes from. It's just curiosity. He smiles. That easy smile he didn't get from me. The smile that, I know, is identical to Kevin Miller's. Don't worry, he says, laughing, putting his arm around my shoulders. It's not like I'm going to find some dark family secret, right? I force a smile. Right, sweetie. No secrets. He clicks the button. Purchased. I hug him, feeling the cold panic rising up my spine. The same panic I felt that night in my father's office. The lie I built to protect my son for 20 years, the lie that saved us, is now in a box, on its way to a lab. In 2 weeks, an email will arrive, and Leo will find out that his father wasn't the hero who died. He's going to find out that the uncle he never knew he had is the monster who is still alive. If Sarah and Leo's journey moved you, if you understand the weight that family secrets can carry, please don't keep this feeling to yourself. Leave a like to show your support for everyone who has had to start over. Subscribe to the channel and, most importantly, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any emotional stories like this one. I really want to know, where are you watching from? Leave the name of your city in the comments. Your presence in our community is essential. Explore our other videos on the channel and discover more destinies that were changed forever.